Hello, and welcome to Mean Street News. Mean Street News is here to provide accurate news to help citizens effect change in their local government and beyond. Being nice is overrated. It is time to be real. I mean what I say, and I say what I mean. The time to step up and step in is now. So please come join me, Katie, over on Mean Street News to discuss Ohio politics and beyond. I hope to see you there. Hello, and welcome to Mean Street News. Mean Street News is here to provide accurate news to help citizens effect change in their local government and beyond. Being nice is overrated. It is time to be real. I mean what I say, and I say what I mean. The time to step up and step in is now. So please come join me, Katie, over on Mean Street News to discuss Ohio politics and beyond. I hope to see you there. Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to Mean Street News. If you're just joining us today, you've missed a lot, but thank you for joining us, and I hope you go back and catch up on all the episodes. But tonight, we are going to be discussing the charges dropped against the Lorain County prosecutor, J.D. Tomlinson, and his deputy chief of staff, Jim Burge. A week before early voting started, J.D. Tomlinson and Jim Burge were both charged with tampering with evidence and intimidation. J.D. was also charged with bribery, supposedly for asking his ex-girlfriend to go to dinner, but it was just silly. But those charges were dropped last Friday due to the witness not showing up for court. So, which I could have kind of told you that, and they knew. And that's because, I want to show you. Oh no. That's because Jennifer Battistelli, the victim in the case, posted on her Facebook after the charges were filed that, she wasn't going to be showing up to court, in which she didn't show up to court. So the charges were dropped. But I want to discuss what happened the week before the charges were dropped. Excuse me, because there was a continuance in this case. Now, we've been talking about election interference in Lorain County in regards to this case because of when the charges were actually filed. We also have been talking about the Captain Vansant, who was the one that investigated the prosecutor and his sexting of the witness, Jennifer Battistelli, and the inappropriateness of that. The whole fact that the only reason they went after Tomlinson over this settlement, which the sheriff's office shouldn't have done to begin with, I don't think it was really appropriate. The only reason they did that is because the JD refused to assign a special prosecutor for the sheriff to investigate to other elected officials, which is the commissioners, David Moore, who just got in for re-election. He just won his re-election. First incumbent in 43 years to win, a Republican, to win re-election. Also, we now officially have, starting in January, an all Republican commissioners board, which is huge. But anyway, so Sheriff Stameti and Captain Vansant wanted to get a special prosecutor to go after the commissioner's rescission of a $7.7 million, which I believe was corrupt contract And after they did that, after they rescinded the contract, Sheriff's Committee tried to get JD to assign a special prosecutor, and JD, over the course of 12 months, said no. And when you didn't provide me with evidence, there has to be, there has to be enough evidence to suspect that there was a crime committed. You haven't provided me with that. So no. So when that happened, they started actually investigating the prosecutor's office themselves. And that's where Jennifer Basile came in. So I'm just going to play a quick video clip for people that are new here, just to kind of show a quick synopsis of this case.
Tomlinson's ex-girlfriend, who used to work for his office. Our Kaitor K has more from Elyria Municipal Court.
I realize that this is an unusual situation in that Mr. Tomlinson is an elected official.
Lorain County prosecutor J.D. Tomlinson and his chief of staff James Burge before a visiting judge Thursday. Their case, alleging tampering with evidence, intimidation, and bribery, surrounds a woman who used to work for Tomlinson. The two started dating in 2021. Court records allege that in August 2023, after the former employee brought a concern to the prosecutor office's chief of civil division, Tomlinson, quote, engaged in disparate treatment by disciplining her. She says Tomlinson grabbed her by the shoulders, shook her, and threw her onto a couch, and also held her employment over her head. Court docs say the former employee resigned the next day and 2 months later received a $100,000 settlement. This settlement resulting in a public records suit and a taxpayer suit. The court docs allege that Tomlinson and Burge harassed the former employee to backtrack her allegations.
We want to respect this order to the letter. We just want to say that we're very comfortable with the evidence that we have, and we look forward to our date in court. We are innocent. We are innocent.
We are absolutely innocent of these charges, and we will prove that to you.
With the charges coming out just 2 days ago, Tomlinson and Burge asked the judge if their arraignment could be continued on a later date so they have time to get attorneys, and the judge set the continuation for October 16th. Meanwhile, Tomlinson is running for re-election in November and appears unfazed.
And rightly so, he was unfazed because he was innocent of these charges. Now, why do I say election interference? Well, for one, they filed the charges a week before the election. And two, for 2 years, Tomlinson has been in the paper getting attacked regarding this settlement and the relationship. Now, am I completely thrilled that, we had to pay $100,000 settlement to Jennifer Batistille? No. Do I understand why they did it? Yeah. Did they avoid the insurance, the premium that we could have gotten? It's basically a severance package because she doesn't get unemployment. And she even said she, needed the money. Now, another point of election interference, why I think it's election interference, is because the Lorain County Sheriff had hired Dennis Wills, who's the executive administrative assistant to the sheriff. He's also an attorney. He was the previous prosecutor for Lorain County. When he lost his election, I think primary to J.D. Tomlinson, he went and started working for the sheriff's office. Well, lo and behold, a few years later, when Tony Sillo, who ran as a Republican and won his current election, he'll be the next prosecutor. When Tony wanted to run, though, he came and got a job at the sheriff's office as human trafficking, which I kind of am interested to know how that's going. I see a lot of missing people lately, Tony. I don't think you're doing that well, especially young women in Lorain. But so he then gets hired on to work in the sheriff's office. First time in history, the sheriff's office has two attorneys working for him, which I find incredibly interesting. Now, Tony Sillo ran as a Republican. However, as we just have discussed previously, Tony Sillo is not a Republican. Tony Sillo pulled a Republican ballot in 2023 to run as Republican. But previously to that, the X says you don't know general elections how people vote, but the primaries he has voted D since what's recorded 2012, so 12 years. I don't think he changed his mind in 2023, and he's never Trumper as well, so I can see that. But that's gonna be a new prosecutor, and the problem with that, and the problem I have with that he's gonna be a new prosecutor, is that he is the old guard. He is the ex-establishment that we got rid of. He is going to rehire Dennis Wells, and he is going, probably as his chief of staff, and he'll say I'm crossing some, party line, which is bullshit. He's a Democrat, so he's going to hire his friend. You're going to see why that's prevalent later. Why we had some major issues at the prosecutor's office, and one of those cases, just one, Nancy Smith is one of those cases that, Rosenbaum and Sillo and Wills all worked at the office. Another one is now this, the Ohio 4 that was referred to on the Joe Rogan podcast the 14th, which I believe was last week. This man, Josh Dubin, went onto the Joe Rogan podcast and brought up the prosecutor's case as election interference, which I found just amazing. He also brought up this case, the Ohio 4, which I'll get into. It's a case out of Lorain, Ohio, and I mean it's insane. 4 men were prosecuted solely on a snitch's son's testimony that he ended up recanting throughout the last 20 years. And multiple times when he did recant, he was then threatened with prison. And then he stuck back to his story, which I find is really interesting. And the person going back into the prosecutor's office that's going in as the new prosecutor is somebody that was there during the time all of these all this occurred. I mean, Tony Sillo spent about 30 years in the prosecutor's office, and now he's going back. So do not expect the up and up there. Expect more of what we've been seeing. But before we get into the Joe Rogan podcast and I get into that, I want to discuss with you guys, and I have some notes so I can stay on track, what I found so interesting about these charges of intimidation, tampering with a witness, and bribery, JD, that just got dropped. Okay. Now the charges were dropped. So were they able to be refiled? Yeah. And in the paper it said that would be up to Tony Sillo to do. I highly doubt he will, since he doesn't have a witness. And even I don't think he has a credible witness at that. And I don't think he had a case to begin with. And we went over that previously. You can go back and listen to my Battistelli stuff. But so I went to, on November 8th, I went to the first hearing after the election. And I found really interesting, Dave O'Brien, who was the prosecutor for this case, the special prosecutor, filed a motion the morning of to try to use hearsay evidence. Okay. The judge seemed surprised by that when it was brought up on the 8th. Then during this time, the hearsay evidence he wanted to bring up was to have Jennifer's supposed ex-attorney. I say supposed because Jennifer's never said that's no longer my attorney, or they've never provided a document saying that he wasn't her attorney anymore. They wanted to depose him and use statements that she said to him as her attorney that she waived, supposedly, according to Kenny Lou, the rights of. They wanted to use, hearsay statements from him, so he had to file a motion. Well, the judge is like, we can't even get to these charges if these charges should be moved over to county court because they're felonies. Yeah, we have to now hear about this hearsay motion. So it was so funny. So they put Kenny Lou on the stand. Okay, Kenny Lou's sitting there, and he's like going over this email, and he's like, "Well, did Jennifer say that?" Objection, hearsay. All right. Well, what did Jennifer think? Objection, hearsay. So they couldn't. I mean, when I say that, I meant like they couldn't even get into why they wanted, how and why they could use the hearsay evidence, because it was hearsay, because that would have been hearsay itself. And Kenny Lou, her attorney, that was her attorney on October 25th, all of a sudden on November 8th, is no longer her attorney and wants to use statements that she said to him while he was her attorney to go after to get these charges filed in county court. Now, what do you mean? What do I mean when I say get these charges filed in county court? They filed these charges of bribery, intimidation, and tampering with evidence in a municipal court. Those are all felonies. So those really should have been filed in county court. It's really out of the jurisdiction of a municipality to overhear those cases. So when they were going in front of, the Elyria Municipal Court, it wasn't because of these charges. It was to see if they had enough evidence to charge the prosecutor in Lorain County Police Court, not County Police, in Lorain County Court, I forget, it's like criminal court, because they're felonies, okay? They're felonies. So the fact that they even filed the charges in municipal court is shady. It's shady. It's just, it's shady. So, and even the judge, I think the judge on the 8th was like, this is insane. This is absolutely insane. A couple things, I have a couple notes here I want to just go over with you. So they wanted to use hearsay evidence. They can't, okay, because they're trying to question Kenny Lou. Kenny Lou can't answer half the questions because the other attorneys, JD and Burge, who decided to represent himself, were both objecting because it was hearsay. It's hearsay. They asked Kenny Lou, her attorney, well, do you have a document? Do you have a statement saying that she recused you as her attorney? Well, in her email, she said she's going to find a new attorney. All right. But do you have anything that says, like, I waived my attorney-client privilege? No, nothing. So he really thought he was going to get up on that stand and just be like, yeah, well, I'm no longer her attorney, so I'm just going to say what I say. And I really appreciate the judge, because he was like, yeah, that's not a thing. You know what I mean? Like, and it's not even on the attorney. The attorney's not allowed to go up there and be like, oh, yeah, I don't have attorney-client privilege anymore. He would have needed to have heard from Jennifer herself to say, I waived my privilege with this attorney. It's on the person, not the attorney, to do that. So he's like, she needs to be here. Well, that whole thing got into, why does Jennifer Battistili believe that she can ignore a subpoena? You guys supposedly sent her a subpoena via email. They didn't personally deliver anything. They sent it to her email. But you sent her a subpoena and she just decided she's not going to be here. And he's like, well, yeah, she's intimidated. She's scared. Well, she's intimidated, she's scared. Well, what did they do? Have they violated the no contact order? Since the charges were filed? No. Have they tried to get in contact with her? No. Has she been threatened? No. She just knows that they're plotting against her. Well, why would she think that? They haven't reached out to her. They haven't threatened her. They haven't violated the protection. They haven't even contacted her, And no offense, we'd like to hear from Jen herself, but she's not there. And he's like, the judge says, he's like, I also have an issue with the fact that she thinks she can just be like, I'm not coming. Then they bring up the fact that or do you want to continue this? And that ended up being a continuance for a week. That's why we waited till last Friday. Last Friday, the charges were ultimately dropped. Now, can Tony still try to bring these back up when he's in office? Yeah. Do I think he's going to? No, because I don't think they have a case. I think there's more charges that are going to come from the inappropriate behavior of the Captain Vansant, the inappropriate behavior of the Lorain County Sheriff, the inappropriate behavior of Tony Still himself and Dennis Wills, and we'll see in the future how that all goes. I'm really happy for JD, but it really, really sucked that this happened. And not only have they railroaded him already for a year, defamed his name in the paper a week before early voting starts, they decide to do this. And he's exonerated. He was not guilty of the charges. And I know it looked bad. And I think, that's an issue. Because it was meant to look bad. It's a smear. An accusation of the crime itself can do more damage than actually, not the actual crime, but then it causes much damage as a person actually who committed a crime. Because the public, in the public's eye, you're guilty. You're a womanizer. Over 3 60-second videos of this woman who's clearly unhinged based on her depositions, clearly unhinged based on the amount of lies that have gone on, and clearly did this as a retaliation against her ex, and she looks horrible. A woman scorned all day. But she helped these individuals interfere with the election. And there's the text message between Vansant and her that says, you could help us here. You help me, I help you, what's a win-win here? So come testify for us. And he the whole time is trying to sleep with her. So I don't know how, but this got the attention of, I think, because the Ohio Innocence Project, Nancy Smith's case, and this new case I'm going to talk about, but this got the attention of Josh Dubin. Josh Dubin apparently has been following this case and believes, for one, it's insane. Two, it's just insane. But he goes on the Joe Rogan podcast last week and brings up the Tomlinson case. And I'm going to play that for you here.
Brought on this show have changed a lot of people's perspectives about our justice system. A lot of people. You brought on some incredible people. And you've told some incredible stories, and as you said, people have been exonerated for crimes that they didn't commit. If you are a person who's listening to this and you could be fucked by the system, it's possible. You could be trapped by a corrupt prosecutor. It happens. Thank God it hasn't happened to you, but if it did happen to you, you would pray that there's a Josh Dubin in the world that pays attention to your case. You know?
I appreciate it, and I mean, it's not just me.
I understand.
There's a village of people.
But a person like you,
yeah.
And I think highlighting that and highlighting the need for that and the understanding of how the system can railroad you and the system can really fuck you over. I think one of the things that we saw during the Trump campaign was the legal system being used against one of the most powerful people in the world, and how they can get away with turning 34 misdemeanors, so essentially one misdemeanor, but 34 versions of it, 34 writing in a ledger incorrectly that's a misdemeanor and is past the statute of limitations, can be converted into a felony and turned against a guy who's running for president as lawfare. It's just completely using the legal system to try to attack a guy and try to take him out of the race, and also try to label him a convicted felon. So once you have this label, a convicted felon, you heard it on all the talk shows, convicted felon. But enough people had a chance to look at the circumstances of the case and understand what he was actually being tried for. Paying someone off to not talk about how he fucked them? Is that what we're worried about? Or are we worried about World War III? Is that what we're worried about? Are we worried about terrorist cells like being established in the United States because our border's wide open? Are we worried about the price of groceries and people being able to feed themselves? That's what we should be fucking worried about, not whether or not some guy fucks someone. Like, who cares?
It's so interesting to me because the conversations.
Who cares? Well, we all do. It's gossip. Everybody cares about the gossip. But why did I play that? Because what happened to Trump on a federal level is the macro to what's happening here in Lorain County on the micro level. They took this guy and they defamed his name. I mean, they sent out these mailers that were horrendous, calling him a felon, facing felony charges. I mean, you just don't, you don't, it was disgusting. I mean, completely disgusting, the behavior of these people. I mean, you had calling him, you know, a womanizer, the paper not helping whatsoever. The paper comes with these people that have schemed, gets together with these people that schemed and lied on the prosecutor and helps perpetuate their story. You have an outside pack, some unknown pack from Virginia, which rumored hold on, sorry. I'm trying to share a picture with you. Anyways, you have the prosecutor getting these. You know what I'm gonna do? Hold on, give me 2 seconds. I'm going to grab you guys these things because I have them. Oh. Oh, shit. Sorry, I just wanted to grab this for you guys so you guys can see these. Okay. You had these mailers coming out from this pack in Virginia, which, here we go. If you read right there, some pack in Virginia, and rumor has it that's associated with Dave Yost, which means so like is supporting a Democrat. It's very telling. My internet's messing up. But you have these mailers come out a couple days before the election, a couple weeks before the election. You have the charges filed. You have the newspaper. You have social media people defaming him. You have, I mean, these attacks. I mean, for somebody who won his election during as a Democrat during the Trump election, won his election by 9,500 votes, to then 4 years later losing. These are the direct cause. The articles are a direct cause of that. The horrific video clips that were played, that were sent to the newspaper by more than likely Jennifer herself, violating her NDA. That's my assumption. How do you beat that? How do you beat all of that kind of against you? And people think we're in the better for it. Oh no. We got the old guard back. We got the 30 years of bullshit back in that office, and it's scary. Like, it's just scary. Tony Stillo is not a good person. He is not going to be a good prosecutor. He is going to bring back the bullshit of the last 30 years. It's not good. So, you know, they bring up Trump, and Trump is the macro of what happened with JD. And actually, this happened in the 2010s with another person. You know, they put out an affair, they put out all this bad press. They didn't try to convict him like they did here. They didn't try to get 3 felony charges on him, but that was all for show. They knew that wasn't going anywhere. They knew it wasn't going anywhere. And then the press completely ignores the fact that the lead detective, or the lead captain, the lead investigator of this case, is sexting the witness, trying to sleep with the witness, has also known the witness his entire life, went to elementary school together. The connections, I mean, it's amazing to me. But they don't investigate the $7.7 million corrupt contract. They don't investigate the $700,000 of lawfare that we've had to pay as a county. They don't investigate, they use our tax dollars to go after their political opponents. And what the hell is the sheriff's office investigating a settlement that went through not only the prosecutor's office, the commissioner's office, but this is the fucking auditor? It was never flagged. It was never flagged. It could have been flagged. It never did that. But nobody said anything about that because Snodgrass is on their side. It's just not right. And if they're going to do this, Tony Sillo is going to help do this, and then the sheriff's going to do this to an elected official, what are they going to do to us? And that gets into what happened here in Lorain County, why it was discussing Joe Rogan. So Josh Stevens says this might be the craziest case he's ever heard of.
That much of a crime, and that people were so up in arms about it. Why are they now considering dismissing it? And I think that it puts the lie to the notion that this was really something that we wanted to make an example out of, and you can't engage in this type of conduct.
Yeah, it's all bullshit.
Played the wrong one. I'm sorry. The parallel to Trump.
Yeah, it's all bullshit.
It was very interesting to me that this is playing out in real time with the incoming president, and I have this parallel situation going on in Ohio. This is called a weave. I'm weaving back to Ohio, and I want to tell you the rest of the story about the Ohio 4. So this guy, J.D. Tomlinson, is the prosecuting attorney in Lorain. He's under indictment right now. He's got 2 months left. Like I said, he now knows, according to him, what it's like to be wrongfully accused of a crime. So watch this. You have these 4 guys who, so again, it's Al Cleveland, Lenworth Edwards, John Edwards, Benson Davis. Yeah, you got to light up for this one.
Yeah, that's fun.
So I told you, William Avery Sr. goes in, tries to get the reward money. They tell him, fuck off. Brings his son in the next day. They say to him, no dice. Then he comes back and says, okay, Al Cleveland told me he committed the murder. Comes time for their trials to begin, and they're going to all be tried separately. And William Avery Jr. gives this account of how this murder happened. And he says that he watches this woman, Marsha Blakely, get beat for 15 to 20 minutes inside of her apartment, and that, the reason this woman gets beat is because Al Cleveland wanted him to work off a debt and beat her up, and he said no. So then these 4 men bust in the door, and this is how the crime occurs. It comes time for the first trial of these 4 men, and William Avery Jr. shows up as the prosecution's star witness, and he says, I want $10,000 to testify. You gave me 2, I want 10,000. And the prosecutors say, we're not giving it to you. And he says, then I'm not testifying. The judge throws him in jail. He's in jail. He is cooling his...
So there's this case. So, like you said, there's this case of the Ohio 4. And because JD was charged and because JD was indicted, he could no longer look into this case because he said, I freed Nancy Smith. And because I helped exonerate Nancy Smith, which is the Head Start case in Lorain, I am now being persecuted by my political opponents. Now, Nancy Smith wasn't the only case. It was this radio contract, but I think JD had the understanding that people don't understand the complexity of this radio contract. Why they went after him also was, I think, the bigger reason they went after him. Didn't like him to begin with, but then when he wasn't, playing ball with the sheriff, that just couldn't be. I'm gonna do this. We're gonna continue to listen, and I'm only playing. I don't want to get copyright infringement. Joe Rogan. This is for educational purposes only. I'm not trying to, steal Joe Rogan's stuff. All right, give me a second.
That much of a crime, and that people were so up in arms about it. Why are they now considering dismissing it? And I think that it puts the lie to the notion that this was really something that we wanted to make an example out of, and you can't engage in this type of conduct. What conduct? It was obviously politically motivated. And, and it happens all over the country. It happens all over the country on both sides of the aisle, though. I have a case right now that, and for me to be able to say this, is probably, I had to think, is this the craziest fucking case I've had? And it has to be. It has to be. Because the DA that is sitting in judgment of whether or not these 4 men that I'm going to tell you about in a moment, right before the election, for him to become DA, gets indicted. He gets indicted for allegedly harassing a former employee and then trying to bribe her not to file a complaint against him, something like that, right before the election. And all of a sudden, he is now embroiled in this. He loses the election a couple of weeks ago, and he is now finds himself according to him, wrongfully accused of a crime he didn't commit. Well, my client is a guy by the name of John Edwards, and there were 4 guys. This is in Lorain, Ohio, Lorain County, Ohio. It's John Edwards, Lenworth Edwards, Benson Davis, and a guy named Al Cleveland, New York guys in the early 90s who were selling drugs in Ohio. They were going back and forth from Ohio to New York. And one morning, a man by the name of Epps is found dead in the street. His roommate is found about 7 hours later, a woman named Marsha Blakely, dumped in an alley behind a shopping center. The case is cold for a month. The police have hit dead ends. They have nowhere to go with the case. The prosecutor's office offers a $2,000 reward for anyone with information about the case. Wouldn't you know that the next day, a man by the name of William Avery Sr. walks in to the Lorain County prosecutor's office. They sit him down with the police, and he says, I have information about the case. Now, this guy, William Avery Sr., was a known informant. The police knew him. He had come and tried to give information about other cases, didn't pan out. He was also a drug addict. And they sit with him for over an hour, and they say to him, everything you're telling us has been in the papers. So you're not giving us anything new here. He shows up the next day with his son, William Avery Jr., and he says he witnessed the murder. So William Avery Jr. talks to the police. At the end of that interview, he goes, "What about the reward money?" And the officer says, "Let's turn the tape recorder off and let's talk about that." They tell him, "We're not giving you the reward money because now you're telling us that information that's been in the papers. And all you're telling us is that you saw Marsha Blakely assaulted in an apartment. You're not telling us anything about the murder." The very next day, he shows up and says that Al Cleveland told him that he murdered Marsha Blakely. So let's put a bookmark in it because I decided I wanted to do something a little bit different today. At the end of the episode, I'm going to give you a Twitter account. I've submitted today a 40-page submission. All of the exhibits that are mentioned in that submission to the Lorain County prosecutor. His name is J.D. Tomlinson. So now I'm going to invite the public. Before you go writing a letter to him or calling him, you read the submission and look at the exhibits yourself. Because what often happens is that in these reinvestigations, prosecutors' offices have something called a conviction integrity unit, where they say they'll reinvestigate the case. And the very first thing they make you do is sign a no media agreement, that you won't go to the media, because the last thing they want you to do is what I just did. Is to talk about the case publicly. So we're not in a conviction integrity unit. We're trying to appeal to a prosecutor, J.D. Tomlinson, who from what I...
So because of what happened with Jennifer Battistelli and these charges, these trumped up charges that were ultimately dropped, this case of the Ohio 4, where JD said he would try and help and maybe get involved. The guy that he's talking about, Edwards, is still in prison. Cleveland, Alan Cleveland is out on parole. But 3 of these guys are still sitting in prison for a crime that clearly they did not commit. Cleveland was not even in the state at the time, unless he had a time machine. You know, he couldn't get here. And this Ray Epps guy was never, and we're going to discuss this more later, but was not even brought in. But because of this clear, these clear trumped up charges, and because in the public atmosphere now, JD is being portrayed as corrupt and as a womanizer and all of this, and it only affected his election, where people are like, "Oh well, you lost an election." No, it's going to affect this case. He can't get involved, because what are these people going to do after that? They're going to accuse him of using his position to help others. He got indicted. He can't do it. Can't do anything for it. Which is really sad, because if you think Sillo's going to get in there, Sillo, who worked under Rosenbaum, was his little protege, you know what I mean? Like, was looked up to, or friends with Sillo, and Dennis Wills, who was the previous prosecutor who was asked to relook into these charges. And I have that. Yeah, Lorain County. Nobody could believe Avery's story. So Lorain County prosecutor Dennis Wills, this is 2016, said that was to review the appeal when it is filed. Jonathan Rosenbaum, prosecutor of the case, is going to comment. He has since left the prosecutor's office, is now in private law practice. But Dennis Wills never looked at this case. He's friends with Rosenbaum. That's not a thing. He never really gave this case a good look. He was there when it all happened. You had these couple people who ran the prosecutor's office in Lorain County for 30 years. We finally got out of that, and they all worked together to achieve their goal, which they did, in getting JD unelected. Because we, as people, sometimes look at the media and look at the fanfare, and we follow that versus following the facts. But I'm going to show you the fact. Okay? I'm going to show you the fact. Can't access your screen. I'm trying to share my screen. It's not letting me. Oh, no, I just blocked it. Oh no. Sorry, I was trying to find myself and it blocked me. Come on, let me share my screen. This stupid computer. Give me a second, you guys. Unshare the entire screen. Only share screens with site you trust. Oh wow. Alright, settings. Alright, it's not gonna let me today. Damn it. I'm gonna do here. I got overlay. I'll do this. Photo download. You're not gonna be able to see this clearly, but it's gonna work for right now. Since it's not letting me share it, so I can't zoom in and zoom out. Okay, so here, what the public's not seeing is this map. Okay, they clearly can't see that there was this contract done. Okay, by Michelle Hung and her lover, Harry Williamson. Harry Williamson worked on J.D. Tomlinson's campaign, okay? This contract that was done was rescinded by the two new commissioners, David Moore, who is right here, and Jeff Riddell, which is right now, these three people right in the middle connected. You'll see the little red lines go there, okay? Once this contract was rescinded, Michelle and Harry were upset, okay? And they and all of the safety forces that are right here with Alan Close, who owns CCI, which is what who the contract was with, the associations that were helped attacking them, the fire chiefs, McCann, the local chief, okay, the sheriff was upset. His office was going to get $3 million. Well, Michelle Hung had approached J.D. Tomlinson more than once, saying that he had a sex tape, had a tape of his mother that was inappropriate. And she didn't tell him once, she told him twice. And even this was brought up in the CCI contract investigation. Hung advised that she informed Tomlinson on 2 occasions about the alleged videos for help. Hung advised that she was afraid of Tom Williams. Hung advised that Tomlinson asked if his mother's a willing party in the incident. So she admits that, you know, she had this blackmail video, and that was used because she wanted a special prosecutor assigned to investigate her 2 cohorts, Dave Moore and Jeff Riddell, for rescinding this $7.7 million, which I believe was corrupt radio contract. And even in the radio investigation that Vansant did, Vansant being the one that pursued the prosecutor's girlfriend, who was sexting his lead witness against the prosecutor, even says in his report for the radios, even if the allegation is true, it's not criminal. Commissioner Moore is insinuating that due to alleged sexual relationship, the county prosecutor is compromised and or being blackmailed not to perform his duties. Well, when Michelle tried to hard press the prosecutor didn't fold. Prosecutor was like, well, she's a consenting adult, and as long as it wasn't, you know, some crime hasn't been committed, it's not my business what my mother does, which it isn't. You know what I mean? And I can prove it because then Michelle later, two years later, says in a video conference that, you know, the prosecutor wasn't looking into cases that they wanted to be investigated. So they started investigating him. He wasn't looking into cases that they wanted, and she says it right here.
County Commissioner Michelle Hung says Tomlinson has repeatedly refused to look into issues she and others have raised and believes Lorain County does not have a prosecutor. Fellow Commissioner Dave Moore says the timing of the charges are suspect. He calls the situation bad.
So Michelle Hung wanted a special prosecutor. When Michelle Hung didn't get the special prosecutor, she started working with, and she had always been working with, Sheriff Hilstemedi, Vansant, I believe Silo, I believe a couple other people, Dennis Wills, which I have an email between those two. So I know those two are working together to investigate other elected officials and elected officials that did not want to be part of the investigation. Now, I think Jennifer Battistelli was a little bit of a honeypot. I think she was sent to JD. And when the blackmail tape of the act between his mom and the other consent and Harry Williamson, which was Michelle Hung's boyfriend, by the way, didn't fold. They started to use Jennifer and his relationship with Jennifer, his private sexual relationships, to go after JD himself. And it's just so shady, people. It is really, I mean, it's bad. I mean, it's just bad. Best like mercy honor. I'm trying to see. Hold on. And then Jennifer and whoever it might, she's saying that the police did it, but I believe my own opinion is it was Jennifer. Jennifer used these tapes, and I think, working with these people to portray JD as a womanizer, which ultimately just cost him the election, which then leads to this Ohio 4 case, where these guys were convicted of murder. One is out of prison now on parole. The other I don't know if he's still on parole, but he was on parole. The other 3 are still sitting in prison. And a guy that worked in the office who's going to hire the guy that, was supposed to relook into this case, and that guy's mentor is the guy that put him in prison. They all spent 30 years in prosecutor's office, is heading back there. But this really has to do with, and I know you guys can't see my pointer, I wish you guys could, the prosecutor here at the bottom in the middle, the 12 o'clock on the bottom, right here in between the woman and the guy in the brown jacket, which is Harry Williamson, Michelle Hung, the commissioner's lover, who was the other person involved in that tape. He worked on JD's campaign. JD and Jennifer had a relationship. Well, when the contract was rescinded, JD, Sheriff Stamidi over here in the black, I'm doing all the black arrows right now, Sheriff Stamidi requested a special prosecutor. When JD said no, they then started doing their own parallel investigation into the radio contract, as well as investigating the prosecutor himself. Now, Captain Vansant, who was the one prosecuting this, was also sending inappropriate text messages, sexting messages to his lead witness and the prosecutor's ex-girlfriend, Jennifer Battistelli. Now, they said that they were investigating the $100,000 contract, a settlement that was done, but that doesn't make any sense because they didn't start investigating that till 5 months after the settlement had already been done. And the sheriff hires Dennis Wills, who lost his election to J.D. Tomlinson, and he hires Tony Sillo, the guy that was running against J.D. Tomlinson, 2 attorneys to be hired to be able to work on Tony be able to work on his election. They're also helping in this investigation against 2 other elected officials, which are the commissioners, on this radio contract that was rescinded. A radio contract where the sheriff's department was going to get $3 million out of it. The municipalities were going to get grant money. And they used their professional associations. They tried to blackmail the prosecutor with sextortion tape. They tried to then investigate, him and paint him as a womanizer to get back in control of the prosecutor's office, which they did. When the FBI wouldn't move with them to go after the prosecutor, when they didn't have enough to actually get a grand jury, they filed these charges in municipal court, which is really weird. Then they, had these ads pulled. Then they had the videos of Jennifer. Then they have all the Facebook nonsense with crazy guy. We all know who that is. And then we have this now Ohio 4 case that we're going to be looking more into, because there's 3 men sitting in prison right now that are more than likely, I'm 90% sure, innocent of a crime that was committed back in the 90s. They've been requested to look back into it multiple occasions. And they said they would, and they haven't. I find it really interesting that they used one person to convict these men. I find it really interesting that the audacity of these people, you know what I mean? The audacity of these people to use our tax dollars to railroad people in our community and ruin their lives. It's astonishing. Now, what I did and what I put together is a book that I'm going to be releasing not tomorrow, but Friday. Friday and Saturday are big days for us because I'm going to release 2 of my books. The first one is I'll be releasing the Tomlinson investigation. So you guys will be able to go through. I made a timeline. We're going to go through that together. And then based on that timeline, all these documents, right, of the election interference. And then I'm going to give you guys some to-do lists with I have some templates of some letters that I want you guys to be writing to people. So you guys are going to get this on Friday, this big one. And then you guys are going to finally get, because we're going to conclude this on Saturday, my radio investigation. You guys are going to get this one with my 45-page timeline. That this is all in chronicle order based off the timeline, all the evidence. So when there's a document, you can basically open this book and follow the timeline with it. Of my radio investigation, my RICO. You guys are finally going to get both of these. And I really want you guys to take some time and look at it. We're gonna on tomorrow, we are going to look at the Ohio 4 case. Before I get back into my radio and Tomlinson investigation, because I don't know what's going on till December 31st. Maybe they're asking for a pardon from the governor or something like that. I did reach out to Cleveland. He said he probably can't come on a podcast at the moment because some stuff going on and legally, but I'm going to get him on at some point because this Lorain case is really interesting. But why I brought it up tonight, it's not only just because of the Joe Rogan thing, but I really love the fact that the Joe Rogan and Josh Dubin saw that this is election interference. This is clearly election interference. It gives you a great example of on a micro level how you think it only affects federal elections. You think when they say election interference, it's voting, it's machines, it's all that nonsense, and it's not. It's conspiring together and using the media and your resources and your power and your people to defame, slander, discredit your opponent. And Lorain County and the prosecutor's office is really interesting because the amount of people that I know personally that have been railroaded, by that office. And I could have done the dirty thing and had all these people on to talk about Silo, and I just didn't think it was going to affect the outcome based on all of everything that's happened. I prayed it would, but I don't think it was going to, so I decided not to. We need to do better than just following the meanness of the world. I know I'm Mean Street, but I mean in the sense of everybody calls me mean. So I was like, fine, I'll see you on Mean Street, and I'll be sitting my ass at Petty Park and, meet you all there. But the media and the newspapers are not telling us. They're spinning us a narrative, and it's like why they call the media now, not the news. It's they're not giving us the facts. They're not giving us. They're not giving you this. You know what I mean? They're not reporting on something and being like, "Here's all your evidence." You know what I mean? They're just not doing that. They're just basically saying like, this is what somebody feels and this is what we believe, and the apolitical thing. And we need to stop doing that. We need to start looking. If I start getting mailers like this, you need to start asking yourself why. Why does the America Project Action Fund, based out of Virginia, give an F about Lorain County? Why? Because they don't. We need to help the people that have been entrapped by our system here in Lorain County. We need to keep a hawk's eye on that prosecutor's office when Silo gets in. It's going to go back to the good old boy days. It's not good. It's just not good. It's not good. We need to pay attention to the Ohio 4. Like I said, tomorrow we'll get into actually that case. I've been, doing a lot of research over the last 24 hours about it just because it was on the broadcast and I didn't really know about it. And then when I started hearing about it and hearing about how, this election interference case with Tomlinson and Burge and these charges with baseless ultimately affected the exonerating somebody else, 3 other men that are sitting in prison right now that are innocent, and maybe exonerating, clearing somebody's name. Because even though Cleveland is out of prison, he still has that crime on his record. And you look up his name, he's still a convicted murderer, clearly not, I believe, not guilty. But the comparison here of, these are 26 years, so it's not compared. But the prosecutor now feels, the JD now knows how it feels to be wrongfully accused of a crime. Well, what if he was convicted? That's where I get with these Ohio. What if he were convicted? This man and these men are spending their lives in prison over someone not doing their job thoroughly and taking the easy route of they're drug dealers anyway, so just they did it, move on. Well, one of the victims of the case, they only got charged with the Blakely murder. The guy that was found a few hours before her, Epps, killed in the same manner. I mean, brutally. I mean, this case is very brutal. Marsha was stabbed 25 times. Her head was ran over by a car. It looked like she was tortured. I mean, that's personal, And the guy that snitched on him was his dad was a known informant, and they were looking for money. They were looking for payout. And I don't know if I put it here. I'm trying to see real quick. And the guy recanted his statement. He's like, I'm overcome with guilt. I got sober. I'm not a crackhead anymore. And, JD should know how it feels to be accused of a crime. The accusation itself, it destroys you. But think about doing 20 years in prison and still being, technically guilty. Think about, Nancy Smith, who spent how many years in prison, or the Head Start case, and being exonerated, that she wasn't guilty. And even in that case, they wanted to send her, Tony Stillo and Dennis Wilson wanted to send her back to prison after Burge dismissed the charges completely. They wanted to send her back to prison. And they kind of did the same thing here. I mean, there's an article written. It's not them. I didn't put it up here. So there's an article written that brings up the fact that this case was sent to the 9th District Court of Appeals. And what I found really interesting in 2016, when Cleveland's case was sent there, and they basically said, the proof of innocence, whatever. The former prosecutor of Lorain County, Greg White, was one of the judges in the 9th District. You don't think he had any influence over making sure this case wasn't found, wasn't cleared, he wasn't exonerated, he wasn't, because his friends Rosenbaum and Wills and all of them, and in the office itself, the integrity of the office, all of that would have been shamed. Like, let's not do the right thing. Let's worry about, our the way we look, We have to start caring. We have to start getting involved. If we don't, who's going to? If it wasn't me sitting here, over the last few months saying that JD is innocent of this, look at the overwhelming evidence showing that this is corrupt. Look at the overwhelming evidence of collusion, conspiring. Call me conspirators. These elected officials conspire with each other all the time, especially when it's political, all the time. It's disgusting. We as the public have to do better. We do. We have to do better at paying attention to what is going on in our county government, in our the prosecutor's offices. Because, who deals with a prosecutor unless you've been charged with a crime? But then you don't want to realize, after you've been charged with a crime, what a shitty prosecutor we have. And what shitty, it's terrifying. And you don't think it could be you. It could be you one day. It could be you sitting there getting railroaded. Absolutely. I'm going to end that here. We're going to end with what Josh Dubin's goal is, what he's looking for JD. I hope to have JD on here. You did promise me, JD, that I would be the first person that gets to interview you if these charges were dropped. And I'm hoping to schedule that next week with him. I haven't heard back from him yet, but we will see. I'm very persistent. Stay focused. Watch this. The Ohio 4. Go on to Twitter, Free the Ohio 4. Follow that page. Voices for Us, I believe it is Cleveland's. I'll post all the links in this show up in the episode description when I do the episode. But congratulations, JD, for being exonerated. I'm really happy for you. I've had your back this whole time. You know that. And Jim Burge, thank you. So, congratulations also for getting exonerated. But I will say to JD, and I'm going to say to him personally when I talk to him, if you're able to do something here in regards to those cases, if you're able to push, just the attention on it alone, towards maybe somebody, agents, something, you should. This is happening, as Josh Dubin says, in Joe Rogan, everywhere. And what happened here in Lorain County is a very, very good example of election interference. And it shows what they did to Trump, they do on a smaller level here. And they did. And they got what they wanted. But people would pay very, very close attention to what Solo does in the future if he's there for that long, if you know what I mean. So I'm going to end with this little clip, and you guys have a great night. Thanks for joining.
Had like a gypsy cab service, a car service in New York. You lived in New York, right? You remember what it was like? You call a cab service,
Yeah.
a car service, and he was with Al Cleveland the day of these murders. Al Cleveland saw his probation officer the day after the murders. People saw him all over New York when the murders happened. John Edwards was with his girlfriend's family throughout the night, from like 10 at night till 3 in the morning. His girlfriend was pissed off at him because he was flirting with some girl in the bar. So these guys have alibis. There is no question. They had absolutely nothing to do with this crime. This woman, Marsha Blakely, was murdered, right? Here's one of the strangest facts in this case. She is seen all over town. All over town. At the time they claimed that this guy, William Avery, originally claimed she was murdered. She's seen by family members, friends. She's looking for crack. She's walking down the street way after this guy claims it happened.
How was she murdered?
She was, throat was cut, and she was run over by a car. All right, so we've talked about tunnel vision before, and when the police think they have the guy, they had a problem on their hands. They couldn't solve the crime, and they have these guys that are drug dealers in the area. So they become easy marks for this. There is a blade sitting in a diagram found right next to Marsha Blakely's body. They never tested it for DNA. They never collected it. They never tested it. It was at a time when DNA is the early 90s. DNA was around. Her roommate, Raymond Epps, is found a mile or two down the road with his throat slit and run over.
Same thing.
Same thing. No one's been charged. No one's been charged. It's an unsolved case as of this day. Why?
Because they pinned it on these other guys.
Because they pinned it on these guys, and this guy, William Avery Jr., only came in with information about one of the murders. The cases were so clearly connected that the medical examiner pointed it out. These people were killed in the same way. Why there isn't an outrage, a fucking outrage about this case is beyond me. When I got this case, I said, there is no way what you're telling me is true. That this guy has come and wants to clear his conscience and tells you exactly what happened, and the FBI told the prosecutors that he's a liar, and these guys are still, 2 of them are still serving life sentences. And when you have to live stamped as a murderer, even in the free world, Al Cleveland is out and he's suffering. I mean, I had to listen to his wife heaving. She couldn't get a hold of herself because she went down to J.D. Tomlinson's office and said, "You told me you were going to help." And he said, "I can't now. I'm sorry, I've been indicted. The last time I exonerated someone, look what they did to me," because he exonerated someone else and his political opponents attacked him. Human beings, we sometimes get in our own way because of outside forces, what we think other people are going to say, think. J.D. Tomlinson's been voted out. He's been wrongfully accused of a crime. It's time for him to say, you know what, I'm going to do the right thing. All I ask is actually a meeting with him. I want to meet with you between now and December 31st. Let me lay everything out for you as I have in this submission. He's now going to have it in his hands. He wouldn't answer my text messages. I'll give him a break. He was obviously going through some serious personal issues, being under indictment, running for re-election. This is an easy thing. This is just doing the right thing. There is no way that you could look at this evidence, and this is why I think it's a good idea for, rather than give a snapshot of a case and have to rely on some process with these conviction integrity units behind closed doors where they run the reinvestigation. I like the public being able to get invested and look at the evidence themselves. Everyone loves a true crime story. So why not, as part of this, let the public help make the case? And when they write a letter, they'll do it more forcefully, or they call him and say, how could you ignore this? So I would just encourage everyone to go on Twitter and go to Free the Ohio 4 and